Hello. Check, check. Live chat. Oh, look, I have two people in the house. My deepest apologies for being late. Always excuses. Never an excuse, just explanations. One thing after another. If it's not one thing, then it's your mother. So rather than delaying any further, I thought I would come on while I'm still looking something up and see if people come on into the chat. So what I am looking up is the date of Virginia Guiffre passing away. Today is Monday, the 28th of April. So she passed away the 25th is what it says. So that would have been Friday, right? Now, I pay very close attention to all the news. Like, I watch World News Tonight almost every single night. I watch other like CSN, Fox, MSNBC, and then I watch a lot of YouTube podcast content creators. And I did not hear about Virginia's passing away until about 24 hours after it happened, I think. Or maybe I did, because when I first found out about it, it was on Down the Rabbit Holes live. I think that was Saturday night. I'll have to look. I'm pretty sure it was. Anyway, it was not on the World News Tonight. Like they failed to mention it, and I find that really suspicious. So Friday. And the reason I find it suspicious is just by there being a delay in the information getting to the public. It's kind of like buying time. It's sort of like that first 48-hour thing. You want to like run the clock down. Let's see. And I'm just going to look real quick while we're still waiting for people to come in. If you are one of the two people that can hear me and you're able to type into the chat and let me know if the sound is okay, then I will know. It looks like it is. It looks like it's working because there's like little dots that move when there's noise and they don't move if it's muted. So I'm going to look at Down the Rabbit Holes video dates. Oh, and it's so funny. Like, when you try to look up a channel that you look up all the time and then it gives you a hard time looking it up. And her channel hasn't always been like that. It makes me think she might be getting shadow banned. I'll have to let her know that's going on, because that's what happens with my regulars. Hello, Susan Lee. How are you? That's what happens with my channel. There's people who are even my moderators who say that they have to like look up my channel every time that they try to catch a show. And I know I'm one of Ara's moderators, and I have a really hard time finding her channel every single time unless I just find it under my subscriptions. So the live that I found out about it from was the one 2 days ago. So yeah, it was Friday night, I think. It was the same day as, but I thought it was really curious that it was not on the World News Tonight. Yeah, it was the same day. Good job, Rabbit. She's on it, huh? Yeah, not a lot of people knew about it that night. Pretty wild. So how are you doing, Susan Lee? And welcome. Thank you for saying sound is great so that I know. Let me do my little run through my regular stuff. And then there's always like the few bullet points that I felt compelled to come on and make my video specifically to discuss a couple of things. One of those things is Virginia Guiffre, if I'm saying her last name right. And yeah, I have a lot to say about it. There's a lot more news coming out about how she was found and what her attorney says, and how there were like crime scene investigators there for 10 to 12 hours, allegedly, according to her attorney, on site where it happened, where she was alone when it happened. Wow. Makes you really suspicious. And then there was something Rabbit said, and I need to get more of the backstory about Donnie being stopped at the airport and somebody asking him about it. And all he said is, "Oh, yeah, that's really sad." And I don't know if that was this weekend. It sounded like from the context she was talking about it that it was this past weekend, but I'm not 100% sure if it was this weekend or some previous weekend. Um, Donnie gets around, you know. He allegedly had affairs with two of Don Jr.'s wives, girlfriends, fiancés, or maybe Eric's. I think they're both Don Jr.'s, but people have, you've probably heard about it already. Vanessa Trump, who's divorced, I think, from Don Jr., from one of the two sons. She dated Donnie before she married his son. Gross. Absolutely gross. And then that Kimberly Goo, however you say her name, so disgusting. And I did not realize she'd been married to Gavin Newsom. And then she was Don Jr.'s fiance. And then she got shipped off to be like the ambassador of Greece. But both of these people allegedly had affairs with Don Sr. Ugh, so disgusting. And to do that to your sons, I mean, with the first one, he dated her first, so that's different. But with the second one, she was engaged to his son, allegedly, when he had an affair with her. Anyway, I can only think about that for so long before I feel like puking. So I really wanted to talk about Gabby Petito's parents and what they believe happened to Brian Laundrie, because they say one thing and I have an opinion about what they are saying, and so I want to break that down. And then what was the other thing I wanted to talk about? There was one other thing. It'll come back to me. Let's see. It's annoying when my brain freezes up. Susan Lee says, "I'm well, and you? First time I've seen your channel. Just popped up. Brian Laundrie possibly still alive and was just starting. So I had to jump in, live in Florida, and watch case while going on." Awesome. Well, welcome, Susan Lee. Lovely to meet you. And I'm curious what part of Florida. I've been to the Gulf of Mexico side quite a bit. I've been to the west, or that's the west side. I've been to the east side of Florida just a couple of times, but only like Orlando and Melbourne. I haven't been south of Melbourne. So I've been talking about Florida a lot, though, lately because of that little airplane that crashed in Boca Raton. If you're familiar with that, I think that was like 2 weeks ago. And the family, the Stark family, the 17-year-old girl, the 54-year-old dad, and the 81-year-old granddad, and what business that Stark family had. It's crazy. Not sure I'm really ever really believe Brian was dead. Well, I've never believed it. So I'm not going to call you a conspiracy theorist, but I'm I'm really curious about Gabby's parents saying that they don't believe he offed himself, but they also don't say that they believe he's alive. But let me just look something up really fast. But yeah, what general vicinity of Florida are you? Are you on the west side or the east side, the north or the south or the central? It's like LA, South Central, right? So yeah. The only other thing that I hadn't gotten to yet was the El Presidente, as I call him, he's got like a really good blunder pretty much daily. But I don't listen to everything he says because he pretty much talks nonstop and I don't want to hear him that much. But I write down some of the funny things he says. And one that he said a couple of days ago, he was talking about MSNBC and he called it MSDNC. And I just thought that was really cute. You know, we all make mistakes, but some of the mistakes he makes, and Susan, I apologize if it offends you. I'm not a fan. I understand for people that are fans, and I certainly don't want to come across as bashing his supporters at all, because we all should have the freedom to support whoever we want to support. And I do understand he's very charismatic and convincing at times, I guess. But um yeah, he says some pretty funny things like rebuttal. He invents words a lot. He talked about having to rebuttal a case, basically. So what he meant was rebuttal, and it's a lot like refute. And yeah, let's put it in the dictionary, rebuttal. But he doesn't catch himself, and his people don't like tell him. And I'm sure that he's a very difficult one to correct. That probably doesn't go over so well. You know, you don't want to be the bearer of the bad news, so they just let things slide, because I'm sure he's just very, very difficult to handle. One of my favorite ones during the campaign was when he called people from Arizona Azurasians, and he was reading it off a teleprompter. So it would have most likely said Arizonians. And, you know, he's not the best at reading. And, you know, a lot of people that have been close to his proximity say that he's like functional illiterate. And again, I have compassion for that. I spent into my early adulthood pretty much being functional illiterate, and I'd say very functional illiterate. I hid it very well. I was a straight A student, which is kind of scary to be able to pull straight A's when you're functionally illiterate. But anyway, yeah. I don't like to be harsh on people. People are people, you know, even if they're in these high powerful roles. But when you're in a high powerful role, you're held to a higher standard, and you should be. You absolutely should be. I mean, sure, you can still make mistakes and you can laugh at yourself, and that's all good. But when you can't admit that you made a mistake, then that's not good at all. But anyway, that was the one that I thought was really funny. The MSDNC, because I had to listen to it a few times. I was like, wait, what's he talking about? What am I missing? So I'm in Southeast Florida, south of Melbourne. I haven't paid attention to the plane crash. Been following Micah Miller case for the last year. Well, good for you. That's a really good case, Susan Lee. That case has my heart. Micah Miller has my heart. And yeah, I have followed that case a lot. I'm not following it currently, but I initially was following it extremely closely. So my channel started with Kylie Rodney's case. If you have heard of Kylie Rodney, if you remember that teenage girl that went missing from a party allegedly out in the woods in the Sierra Nevada, Tahoe woods. So Lake Tahoe, she was from Truckee. Anyway, that finally got the fire under my feet to start my channel 2.5 years ago. And I really wanted just to stay fixated on her case for all of eternity, because I did not expect it to ever get solved because of all the effery. But hey, Fred, hello. But I felt like it was important to talk about her case and not let it fall by the wayside. And then as another case, Trinity Backus, Fred was probably here for that, came into the YouTube true crime community about 3 months after Kylie, her tragedy. And then Trinity Backus had, I ended up making lists of all the similarities between Kylie and Trinity. I know I got up to 70 similarities or commonalities or common denominators. I probably got up higher than that. I could look through my old videos. But anyway, right after that, the Idaho 4 happened, and I tried so hard to not let Trinity distract me from Kylie. I tried so hard to not let Idaho 4 distract me from Kylie. And then most recently, with the election, this last election cycle in November, I was trying really hard to not let politics distract me from true crime. And then I felt like the politics and the true crime were having a head-on collision, and that I needed to just go ahead and speak my truth with it, because that's what my channel's for. It's for justice and crimes. And I think that in our current administration, that we need justice, and that there are crimes happening daily. And I think that the entire election was hijacked. So I have pretty strong feelings about that. And I know I've lost some viewers because of it, and that's okay with me. I just find it necessary to speak my piece. So Fred says, Gabby, then Truckee 3 is when I got addicted to true crime. The Truckee 3. So Fred Field is referring to Dante Del Toro, a young teenage boy. Gabby, Trinity, and Dante were all 16. I believe they were all 16. I know Gabby was a month before her 17th birthday when she went missing. And then Dante went missing from I want to say truck stop, but not a truck stop, a rest area. And he was on a school field trip. And I just get so freaked out about that it was during school hours. I don't think he was there by himself, but maybe he was. Like, I've kind of gotten the idea that there were other kids from his school there, but I think he drove his own car. Anyway, he was collecting dirt samples. And now, Fred, with all of this earth mining of the earth's crust and shelf and core, and Elon wanting everything, and Vance wanting all of the rare earth minerals, it's making me wonder if there were some kind of earth minerals in that dirt sample that Dante wasn't supposed to know about. I know that's a little over the top, but let's stay focused. Stay away from Idaho 4. One screwy case, Kylie, was enough. I know. And the thing that draws me into the cases that I'm drawn to, and Micah Miller's is certainly one of those, what all of these cases have in common, the Truckee 3 and the Idaho 4, Micah Miller, and the election, is corruption in law enforcement. So that's what really draws my attention, because none of this effery could really be happening if not for the cooperation or the green light from law enforcement. If law enforcement wanted to solve these crimes, they could. So that really upsets me, because I like to think that people are doing their jobs, and that people have integrity, and that people aren't going to allow horrible, sick things to happen. So Susan Lee, I'm curious how long you've lived in Southeast Florida with all of the history of Mar-a-Lago, and then there's this police officer in that sheriff's department. He was a deputy from about 2011 until 2016, I think. And then he moved to Russia. And I don't think I have his name right in front of me, because I have way too many notebooks and I can't keep track of all of them. But it might come to me. This is why I can't do a live without my phone, so that I can look things up as need be. The police officer that moved to Russia. So he runs like 150 artificial intelligence types of websites, and he allegedly had some major interference with our past election. So sheriff deputy from West Palm Beach County moved to Russia, hiding out. And then you got Pam Bondi from there too. So John Mark Dugan, a dozen years ago, a former deputy sheriff in Palm Beach County, Florida. This is from a year ago. Sent voters an email. This is weird. This is a New York Times article. Once a sheriff's deputy in Florida, now a source of disinformation from Russia. In 2016, Russia used an army of trolls to interfere with the U.S. presidential election. This year, an American given asylum in Moscow may be accomplishing much the same thing all by himself. And this was an article written this last summer in the New York Times. That is fascinating. And then as the crazy. I need to do more deep diving on this. But it's a Moscow network that has become a potent source of fake news targeting American voters. So I'm curious, Susan Lee, if you feel like disclosing, if you're familiar with this scandal from Palm Beach County Sheriff's Department. I believe it was 2011 to 2016. He was only a deputy for 5 years. And then he says that he escaped to Russia for his own safety because of all the corruption that was going on in his police department. But it also correlates with the 9 years that Pamela Bondi, our current attorney general, was, or she was the state attorney general for Florida. And then that Alex Acosta, he was the attorney general there before her, I think. So he did a lot of protecting Jeffrey Epstein. And then with Virginia Guiffre's recent passing, all of this is resurfacing with Epstein and his evil Ghislaine Maxwell, who I'm sure thinks that she's going to get a pardon from our president. And I know that our president has kicked the idea around, and he probably wants to do it because he wants to appease her because she's got dirt on him, in my opinion. So let me just say that everything I say is simply my opinion for the sake of hoping to start a conversation, open up a discussion, learn something, be educational. All my videos are made for YouTube. It's an infotainment platform. My thumb, it fell on the ground. Please hit your like button if you'd be so kind. I love having my little prop. It's fun. And then make sure you're still subscribed to my channel if you are subscribed. And if you're not, Susan, I would request for you to consider hitting that sub button. It does wonders for the algorithm, and it's free and there's no commitment. And thank you for watching, because just watching is awesome. And share a video of mine with somebody that you think might like my channel. Turn on your notification bell to ring if you want to be notified when I come on live. And yeah, slowing it down, drinking some coffee, keeping up with you guys. Let's see. One screwy case after another. So the thing with Virginia is sounding more and more screwy. And It sounds like they're going to delay the autopsy results for as long as they possibly can. I don't know, possibly a year or two. It seems that that's already been discussed. But let's talk about Gabby Petito, because that was what you said you came in for. And that is a case that really fascinates me. I almost started my channel the year before Kylie Rodney for Gabby Petito, but then I thought that I missed the boat, not knowing that it was just going to go on and on and on forever and ever, in my opinion, because there's still too much effery in that case. And so recently, Gabby's biological mom and biological dad have been interviewed on some of the YouTube circuit. And I think it was probably inspired because of the recent Netflix uh you know haven't there been a handful of these um series about the domestic violence that she lost her life to? um I think there's been several documentaries. I mean, I don't watch the ones that have the actors in them, because then I know that they've taken some creative liberties with the writing. But I do watch the ones that are all footage of the actual victims. And yeah, the most recent one was a couple of months ago, and it had some amazing footage from her road trip, things that she hadn't published yet. And there was a lot of information that was new to me from that documentary. So that documentary, I think, inspired Joe Petito and Nicole. She has a different last name now, doesn't she? Or does she go by Nicole Petito? I forget. Anyway, Gabby's biological mom and biological dad. So I watched the one with the biological dad because the podcasters made it look like he thought that Brian Laundrie was still alive. And I was thinking, there's no way he could say that. Even if he believed it, you can't do that. You can't go against law enforcement, the officials. You can't call the FBI liars. You can't call the coroner a liar. You can't call the local PD a liar. I can call them a liar. I can. But the parent of a deceased mother cannot, if he wants to continue to have a regular life. I mean, that puts a target on your back, and it also will mess with your case. So even though it's considered a closed case, there's always the possibility it can get reopened, especially if Brian Laundrie shows up somewhere, which I think he will eventually. It's a matter of time. Anyway, I didn't get to watch the one with her mother yet, saying basically the same thing. So they both think that Brian is deceased, but neither of them say that they say they don't believe that he did it to himself. They both say that they think his parents did it. So um I slept on that for a few days, and then I thought, in my opinion, from my perspective, that's a really subtle and intelligent way of saying we think the truth is not that we think the narrative is not the whole truth. Basically, they're saying that they disagree with the narrative, but they're not accusing people of faking his death, because there would have to be a lot of coordination in order to fake his death. There was an uncle who was a dentist. There was either family that was law enforcement or really close connections with law enforcement. His mother, Roberta Laundrie, she worked for the government in Long Island for like 25 years. Oh, my thing says battery saver, but aren't you plugged in? Hold on. No, it was not plugged in. It was almost plugged in. So I completed the task. Okay. Anyway, so yeah, Roberta and Brian's dad, Chris, I think those are their names, Chris Laundrie and Roberta Laundrie. They also were millionaires. They had done very well for themselves with a juicing company. And Gabby had worked for that juicing company. And then Brian's sister, Cassie, and her husband, they were kind of part of the family business with a company that provided parts for the juicing machines. So they were also financially very well off. So what I'm saying is that the family was financially well off enough to buy themselves freedom and their own brand of justice for their son, Brian, who they knew did what he did. He admitted it to them, and then he had like a whole month of a head start to go missing before anybody reported him missing. And they never found his ID. They never found his. He got a brand new cell phone right before he went missing. Remember Roberta and Chris? They were going off to send all these packages from the, I don't know, like the FedEx or the UPS storefronts. It seemed really obvious to me even before then. They said, "Oh, Brian's missing," and he's, they took his car. He had taken their car to the woods, but then when he was reported missing, they went and retrieved the car, which you're not going to do that if you think he's out there. But then on Down the Rabbit Holes video that I was just watching right before I came on, she said that this interview that Gabby's mom had with a YouTuber, that there was information about a guest that was staying in their house during the time that Brian was allegedly missing, and that they had completely gutted his room and remodeled it in the 2 weeks that he was like missing. So that tells you kind of all you need to know. And again, for Gabby's parents to disagree with the official narrative is bold enough. They don't need to go any further. And in their own best interest, they really shouldn't go any further than that. But in disagreeing with the official narrative, they're kind of putting a crack in the narrative, and maybe someday it'll blow wide open. And like I said, I think it will. It's only a matter of time until somebody recognizes Brian Laundrie if he's hiding out in another country. And, he has to basically live under a rock for the rest of his life. And someday he'll get too comfortable. You always hear about these cases where people get found. And it's just like the most subtle mistake. They just get a little too comfortable. So wouldn't that be great if he did get his comeuppance? I mean, having to live under a rock is pretty bad in and of itself, but still, he should have to face the music, and Gabby's family should get the satisfaction of looking him in the eye and telling him exactly what they think of him. In my opinion, that would be better justice. Anna Bees, hello, my dear. I think Brian is alive. Who is saying that his parents did it? So Gabby's parents, Gabby Petito's dad, Joe Petito, he was on an interview. Oh, if I can remember the name of the podcast, it's the couple. The husband is a psychologist and the wife is a professional news journalist, and they have their own podcast, and I can't think of the name of their channel. If you can, or I can try to find it and put a link to it in the description. Yeah, I will definitely do that. I'll put a link to the interview where they interviewed Joe a couple weeks ago. So I saw that one, but I haven't seen this one that Down the Rabbit Hole channel was talking about today. That is Gabby Petito's biological mom, Nicole Schmidt, responding to that same documentary with basically the same opinion that Joe has, which is that she stated to these podcasters, and it was a channel I'd never heard of, but Rabbit from Down the Rabbit Hole, she recommended it. So I will put a link to that in the description too, and I'll try to watch that one. But they both basically stated that they have the same opinion, that they believe that he's deceased, just that he didn't do it, that they did it. That's pretty huge. It's pretty significant. Like I said, for them to disagree with the official narrative in such a high profile case, and them being the family, that is pretty ornery. I'm going to say tongue in cheek. I mean, that's pretty bold to step forward and say you're not buying what law enforcement has stated as truth, because it's kind of just the unspoken law that we're all required to believe what law enforcement states as truth. If we don't, then we're unruly, we're rebels, we're conspiracy theorists, we're bad. We don't trust law enforcement. And I do trust law enforcement. I'm married to law enforcement, so I better trust them. but I know from my own life experience, I used to work in the courts. I'm a mental health professional, been a licensed mental health professional for over 25 years. And I know that people in positions of power lie routinely, even under, even when they're testifying under oath. I've seen law enforcement lie. I've seen lawyers lie. I've seen judges lie. So that gets you pretty jaded. When I worked in the courts and saw that with my own eyes, I wasn't expecting that. I had solid trust in our system, you guys. I trusted all law enforcement, all government officials. I mean, I was really naive, but I was just trying to be a good citizen. What can I say? Anyway, laugh or cry, right? So we are just at about 40 minutes, and it's about 4 o'clock, and I didn't want to stay on too long since I started so late, but I want to catch up with the rest of what is here in the chat and then look at my notes again. Fred says, be right back, out to check for bills. Oh, how fun, right? The little kids, they always want mail, and then when they become young adults and they realize that the only mail you get usually is bills, they're like, that's not fun. No, it's not. Especially when it's your birthday and then you have to pay massive bills. You're in the state of Ohio, you have to pay your license, your car tabs. You have to pay that on your birthday. As a licensed mental health professional, I get to pay my licensing fee on my birthday. So, it's sort of like happy birthday not. It's like the unbirthday bonus. It's like the birthday punch between the eyes. I don't know if true, but I thought I heard Roberta had FBI connections. She absolutely has FBI connections, Annabise. Thank you for going back to that. I started to say about the law enforcement connections and her working in the government in Long Island. And then remember their lawyer, Steve Bertolini, and he's like a Jersey lawyer. So Brian Laundrie called the parents from Montana the day that Gabby unalived by his hand. And then immediately when they hung up the phone, they called Steve Bertolini in Long Island to then retain them an attorney. They wired $20,000 either to Steve Bertolini or to the attorney in Montana. But I think through Bertolini, they got a local attorney. But they paid $20,000 that same day, all these records show. And that was the day that it happened. What was it? August 27th, I think, of 2021. Anyway, they live in Florida. Why are they getting a Jersey lawyer? And he's just so freaking mobster. Oh, I'm trying to think what the other funny thing was that Trumpster Fire said. Very mobster in the last day. It's just like what typical mobsters say. Again, I'll think of it. My brain freezes up when I'm on live, and I can't think of nothing unless I have it in my notes or you guys say it. So keep me on track, please. What was the thing that he said? Forget about it. That's what he said. This was in the last 24 hours. He just was like out on the tarmac, I think, being interviewed, and he said, forget about it. And he said it just like a freaking Chicago mobster. It was hilarious. It's just like, dude, could you be any more obvious? Um, and Hidden True Crime, I think. Oh, thank you, Annabise. That was the one who interviewed um the dad or the mom. Is that the one that you're talking about that I said I watched, or is that the one that you think interviewed Nicole? But yeah, that sounds right. I think that might be the one that I watched. The married couple. And then the other channel that Rabbit was talking about had I think two people also, and I think that the guy on the channel had an interesting background. Like he was already famous from being on Twilight. He's one of the stars of the Twilight series or something. So that's funny, huh? Brian is creepy looking like Stefan in Maddie case. Absolutely. They're so gross. And yeah, one of the things that I think Gabby's mom Nicole said in support of her theory that he is deceased is that uh, reciting or reiterating that they found all but two of his bones. But I've looked at what they say are his bones online, and maybe they've cleaned it up. But when they first posted photographs of his skeletal remains online, they were like all different shapes, sizes, and colors. It was very obvious to my naked eye that that was like a puzzle that they put together with a whole bunch of different people's remains. But that's just my opinion. I'm not a professional, so I don't know nothing. But I mean, the parents find the freaking tooth? And didn't they just happen to have his like dental records in their back pocket? Just the whole thing with that dry sack and how it was obvious that they had it with them when they pretended to like plant it and then pretended to find it. And the whole park being closed, Mayayachi Park, is that how you say it? That whole park was closed down for a month. The FBI was in there every day for a month, and then the day that they opened it to the public, Chris and Roberta go out there for like less than half an hour, and then they're like, oh, here's his dry pack, and it has everything in it except his driver's license. Oh, but look, what do we have here? A tooth. And remember all the hilarious things people were posting online of Mr. Laundrie, Brian, missing a tooth, just traveling around, and uh, absolutely gross. Absolutely gross. And there were all those sightings. There was like one person in particular who was sure that they ran into him in like Tennessee or something. I mean, I fully believe to this day, to the bottom of my core, through and through, with every cell of my body, I thoroughly believe that he shot and unalived um, Kylan Schulte and Crystal Turner, the lesbian couple there in Moab. And, when there were first allegations of that, the other side was saying, oh, no, he couldn't have done that because he didn't have a weapon. And then they said that he died by weapon pew pew to his own self, but then there was no weapon ever found. Like, give me a break. So he didn't have a weapon, but then he did have a weapon, but then the weapon was never found. Like, try making some sense once in a while if you want your little narrative to be believable. But that's the thing. When they come up with these fabrications and lies, they don't make sense. But if the police chief says it, if the sheriff says it, if the person in the position of authority says it, people take it at face value as truth. And they know that. So they abuse that power too often, in my humble conspiracy theory opinion, allegedly. Brian is creepy. Yeah. I used to believe in them too. Brian has probably had plastic surgery. You are probably correct, Annabes, and he'll still probably screw up in some way. He'll get in a relationship with somebody. He'll he'll end up doing what he did to Gabby to somebody else. Just like Joran Vandersloot. Like he did that on the 5th anniversary to Stephanie Flores, the 5th anniversary to the day of when he did that to Natalie Holloway, or the day that Natalie Holloway went missing. 5 years to the day, like a celebration. And these people are so twisted. They are their own worst enemies because they can't control themselves. If they could control themselves, they wouldn't do it to begin with. So there's that. They're working against themselves. I don't know if they could fix those uneven eyes of his, or that peanut head. Like he looks a lot like Chris Watts, the weird peanut shaped head. And it could be with both of them that they have some sort of fetal alcohol syndrome. A friend of mine worked on that, like, world famous fetal alcohol syndrome project at the University of Washington for 20 or 25 years. So that's a fascinating study. And that weird peanut shaped head can be one of the signs and symptoms of fetal alcohol syndrome. It's not an exact science, so it's hard to say, but there could be something like that. I mean, both of them have vile mothers, in my opinion. So there's that shady business, the one you were talking about. Oh, thanks, Anna Bees. So yeah, I think you're right. I think it's called Hidden True Crime, and they're really good. They're a cute married couple. They're very professional, though. Like if you didn't know they were married, you could watch many of their episodes not knowing it, unless it happens to be an episode that they mention it in. It is gross. Oh, I believe that too. That makes sense. So yeah, let me look at my notes and then wrap up, just because we're at 50 minutes. And like I said, I didn't want to be on too long today since it's already getting towards the end of the day. Oh, I've been gardening, you guys. I think I told you that last week, where I was like just getting the dandelions, and they're endless. They are just freaking endless. But I highly recommend it. It's sort of like slaying dragons. It just feels very cathartic and metaphorical. You're just getting the weeds out of your life, right? So I think my trash can probably has like 30 pounds of dandelions in it. I'm not exaggerating. And I probably have another 10 pounds to still get. It is insane. Like, because every time I get them all, then the next day there's new ones. So it's hard to identify all of them, because the problem with weeds is that they blend into their surroundings, and it's a lot like criminals. Criminals are a lot like weeds, in my opinion. They get very close to other plants. Even though you're looking for them, you can't see them, because they're literally like hiding inside and behind and next to the other plant, which is exactly what criminals do in our society, in my opinion. So let's see. Yeah, I've said that all of Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell's victims have to be extremely triggered by her passing away. And if it was this, I mean, even if it was self-inflicted, to me, it's still a product of all the nefarious abuse and treatment that she's gotten her whole life. But if it was others that actually did it, I think they just kicked a hornet's nest, because I think regardless of whether Virginia did this to herself or she was the victim of yet more evil, I think it's either way. I think it's going to kick that hornet's nest, and that the other victims that have spoken up are going to speak up more, and that the ones who haven't spoken up are just going to go ahead and do it. Because yeah, people might get scared, but then if they've been living in this fear, and I'll tell you, a lot of people, when they're assaulted in that most intimate way, they feel like a part of themselves was red rummed, and so they're like the walking deceased. And so speaking their truth gets them out of that prison, and that freedom is worth the price, even knowing that something nefarious could happen again. They get sick and tired of living in that fear, and they want out of the prison that their life has become. If they're wanting to talk about it, I mean, sure, there are victims who might choose not to talk about it and feel like that's their choice and that's their freedom. But I think that when people go through traumatic experiences, it's important to speak your truth. It's important to integrate it into your life. It's important to create a meaning out of it and not just being a victim. So, and then all this allegation of Virginia Guiffre's husband, I think his name is Bobby Guiffre, and they were going through a divorce, but they'd been together for like 22 years, I think. So now the allegations are coming out about domestic violence, and maybe there was domestic violence, but maybe not. Maybe that's a fabricated narrative to try to sew this other storyline together of her doing this to herself. I don't know. Like, you can't believe everything that you are presented with from our media, whether it's mainstream or the YouTube. And right, we all know this, but I'm just reminding myself and anybody else who cares to listen in. So yeah, Anna Bees, I don't know if you missed the part where I was talking about the exes of Don Jr.'s that his daddy slept with. Isn't that cute? He's such a stud. Allegedly, he had an affair with Kimberly Guiffre. Like, why don't we just call her Guido? Kimberly Guido. That she looks like a Guido. Guiffre. I don't know. She's disgusting. But she previously, before getting engaged to Trump Jr., she was married to Gavin Newsom, the freaking governor of California. I did not know that. So daddy had an affair with her allegedly before then they shipped her off to be like the ambassador of Greece or whatever. And then there's Vanessa Trump, who's now dating Tiger Woods, who was dating Donnie Sr. before she met his son and then married his son. And that's Kai's mother. Kai's Donnie's oldest granddaughter. So he slept with two of his son's conquests. Serious conquests, not just like one night stands. Partners. Like presumed life partners. Like, that's freaking gross. This is the president of the United States. I mean, until Ronald Reagan, we never had a president who'd even been divorced. And that was scandalous at the time because Nancy Reagan was not his first wife. That was extremely scandalous. And I kind of doubt that there's been a president that was married more than once since Ronald Reagan. And then, of course, Trumpster Fire's been married 3 times. And he's probably not done yet. We'll see. I'm sure he wants to be. He wants his little Yugoslavian, Slovenian mail order bride is what I think she is. I know she's Slovenian, but I think she's like a mail order bride. I'm sure he wants that to be his last so that he can pretend that it's a real relationship because he's a real boy, right? Like Pinocchio. Let's see, what else do I have here? I wanted to share with you guys about Liz Stein, who is one of Epstein and Maxwell's victims who did speak out and testify during the trials. I think she testified. I know she at least went to every single trial date, and she lived in Philly, and to go to the court in New York City, she had to ride 2 hours each way on the train, so it was like a 4-hour trip every day. And she was waking up at 4 a.m. every day to arrive to the trial on time. So, Liz Stein is her name. But I was mentioning the Art Institute in New York City where, which victim? Maria Farmer was a graduate she got her master's degree in fine art at the New York Academy of Art in New York City. And that was one of Epstein's hunting grounds for victims. Mar-a-Lago was another one of his hunting grounds for victims. So it's my belief that all of this noise with Guiffre and her alleged car accident with the bus and her hospitalization and the photograph with the bruises, I think that all of that was a sham, and it was basically like laying the foundation, the path to get to her being deceased. And that by bringing that case up, by bringing her name up, that's only going to make it a more dangerous situation for anybody who still has something to hide, like El Presidente might. And then, like I said, if he tries to give a pardon to Ghislaine Maxwell, good luck with that. Good luck with that. That will blow up fast. So Sarah Ransom is one of the Epstein Maxwell victims that did testify. I really want to say their names, and I want to learn more of their stories. And Maria Farmer is dealing with a brain tumor, her second brain tumor, right? And she, I think, was getting ready to do so. That would put an even bigger target on her back. But her little sister, Annie Farmer, who's a psychologist in Texas now, and they were both victims who testified both against Epstein and Maxwell. They were actually the first victims to ever report Epstein and Maxwell to the authorities in 1996, you guys. 1996. Wait, that's when it happened. But I think they reported it right away. I think they reported it that same year and got nowhere. And then a few years later, the authorities got back in touch with them and said, "Oh, now we want to take your story seriously." But then the charges that were against Epstein, the first go around, like in the early 2010s or sometime in the 2010s, it might have been like 2008, I think. So some of those charges stemmed from the Maria Farmer and Annie Farmer's stories from 1996, and so many others. I mean, the what's so disgusting is that the authorities could have prevented so many victims from being victimized. Like, that's the bottom line. That's what's so disgusting and so dreadful and so sad. And some of those authorities are that Alex Acosta freak that I was talking about last week, who was in the first Trumpster fire cabinet. And now we've got this other Trumpster fire cabinet where the whole freaking cabinet is a Trumpster fire. But Alex Acosta almost didn't get sworn in because of his messing with the Epstein case back there in Florida back in the 2010s. So he did get sworn in, but then when Epstein was arrested in 2019, Alex Acosta was forced to resign 2 days after Epstein's arrest. And then it was just a month later that he was found deceased in his cell where he was Epsteined. And then it was 9 days after that Hegseth married his wife at one of Donnie's golf courses in New Jersey. Not the one that Donnie's ex-wife is buried in the mud at, but a different one. So not to get those confused. I mean, what? Hey, Billy, darling, you're here. It's always lovely to see you, my dear. Oh, that's so gross. Here, I think I might have missed something. But I don't want to mess anything up either because this stupid touch screen. Let me see if I can. Oh, okay, good. I am catching some things I did miss. I wish I could do work outside, but I can't with my knee. Yeah, I know it's hard. I'm very grateful. And it kind of has been reigniting my vertigo. So I have to be careful and take it in small doses, which is hard. You know, gardening is very addictive. Like I just want to do it all. Like I don't want to stop. My yard has only a dozen or so, but 2 neighbors have dandelion grow plots. LOL. I feel a battle coming. Both are rental homes. Oh, that's funny. Anna B says, I was going to say something that I thought of yesterday. I should have wrote it down because now I forgot. I think I had to do with Kylie. Yeah, definitely write it down or text it to somebody or text it to yourself. But yeah, if I don't write stuff down or get it in my phone, good luck ever remembering it, no matter how easy it seems like it would be to not forget. It's impossible. It's absolutely impossible. And then Anna B says, oh no, that's so gross. Oh no, Gavin Newsom. How could he? And then, Anna B's to remember a few months ago when Melania and Trumpster Fire got off the airplane and met with Gavin. And remember, Gavin kissed Melania and she didn't try to knock him away with her hat rim like she did her hubby at the what was that? That was the inauguration day. She wouldn't let him kiss her on his inauguration day even. He probably thought he could get a quick smooch in public to make it look like they really are married. It really is a real marriage for real. Yeah. As if. Anyway, how gross is my thought. Let me finish that thought. That Donnie allegedly had screwed Gavin's ex-wife. And did Gavin know that? Donnie, I'm sure knew it. Did Melania know it? Did they all know it at that moment when they were all standing on the tarmac? When the First Lady and the El Presidente went there after those horrible Los Angeles fires to meet with Gavin so that he could grovel and beg for money. And Trump could say, nah, you suck. And so does your ex-wife. But she sucks good. Sorry, I had to. That was bad. That was really bad. I should have at least done a trigger warning. Trigger warning, retroactive. Gross. But yeah, wouldn't that be bizarre if all 3 of them were standing there on the tarmac and they're all thinking it? Like, what a weird world we freaking live in. Or at least Donnie would have known it if Gavin didn't, or if Melania didn't. We know that Donnie would know it. And then wouldn't he feel like such a clever little bastard to have that on everybody? Like, haha, I screwed your ex-wife, and haha, Melania, I screwed your stepson's fiance. Again, sorry, trigger warning retroactively. And we can all get our barf bags now. Okay, trickle down economics my butt. I think she's a mail order bride too. Well, and I think she's a Melania bot, Anna Bees. Have you seen the Tracy Ullman videos of Melania bot? There's 2 of them. I'll put the links in the description later to this video because they are so funny. So funny if you're a Tracy Ullman fan. And if you're not, there will probably still be funny, but it's sort of like that Monty Python humor because she's British. So it's different than like our funny stuff. It's like way drier. It's good. Melania bot. Perhaps a shut the F up gift from his handlers. Hello, I don't doubt anything anymore. Um, Everything you are saying is what I believe too. I feel the Pope's passing was a hit. Yeah, I mean, I think that's entirely possible. The timing is so suspicious. And then, especially that on paper, it says that he passed away the day after the visit. And, because you wouldn't want to say he passed away the same day as, because then it looks more obvious, right? I don't know. I just think that's a little yellow flag, in my opinion. JD did it, Billy says. Can you imagine how vile you would have to be to take a hit on a pope on Easter Sunday? Like, that's worse than Satan. And the queen, too. Oh, interesting. JD did the queen? Billy darling. And just so you know, I can't highlight people's comments because I still haven't taken my computer to get my cursor fixed. And if I try doing it with my thumb, it's not worth the risk because I got really fat, messy thumbs that just slide all over the place, and you never know what's going to happen with the touch screen. It's ridiculous. Yes, I remember. LOL. Fred Field says my Facebook and Instagram were hacked yesterday evening. Ned PW's needed. Someone trying to silence me. Wow, it's probably scammy. Seriously, Fred Field. It's probably the Hamburglers, the neighbors of Kylie's family, where the Lost Trail Lodges, what used to be Kylie's family's neighbors, old neighbors. No, I haven't seen Tracy Ullman, but I will check it out. It is so funny. They're like 7 years old, I think, but they could have been made yesterday. Her stuff is just timeless. No, the Queen was a hit. Yeah. Yeah. I have never even considered that, Billy darling, and I completely respect your opinion. I'm going to have to look into that. That would be wild, especially because she was so old. But yeah, I mean, when you're that old and you have that much resources at your fingertips and you have so many people trying to keep you alive, they can keep you alive for a really long time. I mean, modern technology can keep you breathing with the iron lung, if nothing else. I'm sure that's what some of these weirdos like the big E and the little T think, that they're just going to be kept alive forever. Their brain is going to sit in a jar on a shelf or something, and they're going to be bots. Like, who would even want that? They're evil, Billy. I think that too. Oh my goodness. Anna Bees thinks the Queen. Wow. See, again, because she was getting up there in age, I was just expecting it, and I was kind of surprised that it was taking so long, and then I didn't question it. And you know me, I question everything. Who shook her hand last, Billy? Pope was old too. Well, why don't I just see if Google knows who shook the Queen Elizabeth's hand last, and then we'll wrap it up, unless you guys want to keep going. Who visited Queen Elizabeth last? And I still haven't gotten my new phone all hooked up. I need to do that. The last individual to formally visit Queen Elizabeth II was Liz Truss. She met with the Queen at Balmoral Castle on September 6th, 2022. To be formally appointed as Prime Minister. Queen Elizabeth passed away 2 days later on September 8th. So I'm sure she had people during those 2 days after that person visited. Oh, wait. It says Charles and his wife spent an hour with the Queen privately at her bedside in the hours before she passed away. Do you think it was Camilla that did it? According to the book, Princess Anne, along with Angela Kelly, the Queen's senior dresser and trusted confidant, took turns by her bedside. Who was she with when she was... That says Princess Anne. The king and Camilla spent an hour with her privately before she passed. So privately, there's your key word right there. And what were her last words? I'll see you next week, she said to the prime minister. That's funny. But that was 2 days before she passed away. Like, I bet she said something else in those 2 days. Like, no, don't. Right? Let's not forget that Chris Cornell and Chester Bennington supposedly unalived themselves. They were looking into trafficking. Absolutely, Anna Bees. So for people who don't know, Chris Cornell was the lead singer for Soundgarden. And Chester Bennington, wasn't he the lead singer for Linkin Park? And they were like best friends. And allegedly they were working on a documentary about trafficking in the entertainment industry. And didn't they pass away just like a month apart, I think? And yeah, they both were by hanging. With Virginia Guiffre, I had heard that it was by hanging, but then this more recent information was that it was like an overdose and that they hadn't determined if it was intentional or not. Yes, Camilla or Charles. Charles is weak, so Camilla. Right. Well, and Camilla would want the power because if Charles, I don't think he'd been diagnosed with the cancer yet, but maybe privately. And I'm sure that, he was having a lot of health issues. So with his failing health, Camilla might have been afraid that if something happened to him before Queen Elizabeth, that she wouldn't get her little title. I don't even know what her little title is because it's not queen. It's more like queen side piece or something like that, right? Chris Cornell was so awesome, wasn't he? I know, I love him. I don't know Chester Bennington's work as much, but I've heard people love his music just as much as Chris Cornell's. Prince Andrew and crew, OMG, all of them tie into Puff Dragon. Now I don't know what Puff Dragon is. Billy D, help me out here. But yeah, Prince Andrew, because it was his mommy, Queen Elizabeth, that took his title away when he was accused by Virginia Giuffre. And then, I think he paid her at least $12 million, if not more, in the settlement. And that's one thing that makes it harder to believe that she would have taken her own life, is that she had only gotten that money in the last couple of years. And she was able to buy this big farmhouse that she was living on where she was found, no longer living. And that she had plans to renovate the entire thing. So she was really excited about that, her attorney says. And it's not to say that people with money don't do that to themselves, but that she'd been through so much already that it just doesn't make sense. I mean, in my opinion, I think her doing it is very unlikely. I thought from the get-go, you guys, I said this in my video yesterday, because I think yesterday was the first time I talked about her case, or since her passing was the first time I talked about it on my channel, because I found out after my live on Friday. And it's one of the reasons why I've been deep diving into the Epstein case, into the Maxwell case, into the survivors stories, everything that I can find, because when Virginia was in that alleged school bus car accident and she posted that weird picture of herself in the hospital bed saying that she had 4 days to live, I thought right away that this could be that she's being held hostage and she's being forced to make this weird post. I've said it a couple of times, but I'll say it again for anybody who missed it, that basically they were laying the foundation to lead straight to her passing away soon thereafter and nobody questioning it. And the bruises on her face, her black eye, they don't look real to me. They certainly don't look like the types of injuries you'd get from a car accident. So now there's stories about the domestic violence. And again, that could be stories. I know that the stories are substantiated by police reports and family members. But again, if it's something like billionaires trying to create this fake narrative, it's easy for them to get law enforcement to cooperate. It's easy for them to threaten family members to get their cooperation too. So just because it's being stated that her husband was a domestic violence perpetrator, I'm not going to believe it that quickly, given the predicament that Virginia Guiffre was living with. I mean, she was marked. She'd been marked since the day that Prince Andrew first violated her when she was 17. She'd been marked since that very day because she's got the dirt on him. And, you know, one of the things people like that like to do is they like to make an example out of folks so that other people don't get the same idea. Like, this is the fate that will happen to you if you testify, if you file a lawsuit. And she filed at least 3 lawsuits, I think, against Epstein, against Maxwell, and against Prince Andrew. And probably others too. I don't know. I don't know if she'd filed a lawsuit against Mar-a-Lago, since that's where she was working when she got recruited by Ghislaine. And I don't know how many others of their victims were recruited from Mar-a-Lago, but that was allegedly one of Epstein's hunting grounds. Just like the art school, the New York Academy of Art, and then there's a fashion institute as well. I can't remember if it was Liz Stein or a different victim that was working at the fashion, that had graduated from the Fashion Institute and then was working at like the really high-end department store. And that's where Ghislaine found her. And then she tried to hide from them. She tried to get away. She would move. She would change her phone number. She would quit her job. And then they'd find her because, you know, they've got eyes and ears everywhere. So the New York Academy of Art, where little E was on the board of directors, and the director of the institute was a Guggenheim. I think it was Susan Guggenheim, but she essentially allowed Epstein and Ghislaine to use their connection with the school to have access to all these college kids. But then she went on the defensive and denied all of that. And I mean, the way she went on the defensive is so bitchy that it just makes her look all that much more guilty, in my opinion. So the Lacoste School of Arts in Santa Clara is where Maria Farmer got her bachelor's degree. She was from Kentucky. The Farmer sisters, Annie Farmer and Maria Farmer, were from Kentucky. Annie Farmer was like the oldest of a big family. And I think, did I say Annie? I meant Maria Farmer was the oldest. And I think Annie Farmer was the youngest. But Maria Farmer went out to California to get her bachelor's in fine art. And then she moved to New York City to get her master's in fine art. And then she got hired by Ghislaine, and at Little E, I think her first job with them was to be the receptionist at the front desk of his house. He had a front desk of his house to check in all the visitors because it was this $55 million mansion in Manhattan, 7 stories, like the largest, the most spacious, the most expensive single family dwelling on the entire island of Manhattan. And she has said that she would check in like 3 young girls a day, a few hours apart. And sometimes they would leave crying and upset. And when she would ask Ghislaine about it, Ghislaine would tell her, oh, they're just upset because they didn't get the job. And the pretense was that they were there to interview to be Victoria's Secret catalog models, Victoria's Secret models, which the owner of Victoria's Secret, Les, he denies. He says that's a crock, but then you can't really believe anything he says either. So I am going to wrap up. I keep going on and on. I love talking with you guys. Let me read the rest of what you have here. They did it in the history books. Why switch it up now? They sick. So I don't remember the story of Puff the Magic Dragon, if that's what you're referring to, Billy Darling. I could Puff Father Daddy Diddy Puffy. Oh, are you calling Diddy Puffy the Puff Dragon, or are you referring to the storybook? Because I do appreciate the speaking in code, but if I don't know the code, then I get confused. Speaking in code is hard. LOL. There we go. See, I just figured it out right before I read that. I know I do that to people a lot because I'm constantly speaking in code so that I'm not flagging the algorithm. And I'm sure people that are not familiar with my channel are just like, what the hell is she talking about? So I try to explain that I'm speaking in code so that people know. Like when I say the Hamburglers, all of us who've been studying the Kylie Rodney case know that that's the very wealthy family that lived next door to Kylie Rodney's family, that their family has connections globally, internationally, 4th or 5th generation at this point in time. And they are connected to all things financial everywhere. And they're connected to Google. They're connected to YouTube. So that's why a lot of the Kylie Rodney channels get shadow banned. And that could be why Fred Field got hacked. It very easily could be. It probably is. Because who's going to go hacking Fred Field? Come on. They did it. Okay. Is it Billy and I just spelled it out? Girl, oh, I kind of remember I was thinking about the gangster people who started up Chicago and Kansas City and Vegas. I didn't know Kansas City tied into all of that, Anna Bees. So the people who started up Chicago and Vegas, then you had like Frank Sinatra, who didn't Frank Sinatra pretty much start up Reno? I mean, I know the whole Brat Pack had a lot to do with Vegas getting started. And then you look at our Trumpster fire, El Presidente, and his whole thing with Vegas, Trump Tower there, and with the what he did to Atlantic City. There's a good documentary about that. Like, he destroyed that city. He didn't just destroy his own casino, he destroyed the entire city. With his 5D chess, art of the deal. And now the person who wrote Art of the Deal, who ghost wrote it for him, feels like terribly responsible for the state that our country is in right now. But man, I think the bottom is just falling out. Like every day you think it can't get any worse, and then it gets like twice as bad. And they just like refuse to let go of Hegseth, because they don't have anybody to replace him that is such a freaking clown like he is. And who else is going to utilize that makeup room as well as him? I guess Vance could take it over. Donnie could use it, but in all seriousness, they never hired Pete for his brains and experience. He doesn't have very much of either. They hired him for his loyalty and his BS, and he has loads of loyalty and BS. Loads of loyalty towards the Trumpster fire, not any loyalty towards baby mamas. So for the one that he's with right now, good luck with that. Yeah. And for him too. That's how he got together with her. She was cheating on her husband with him. So Pete, good luck with that. Once a cheater, always a cheater. Don't let either of them near Donnie. Come on. He's got the hots for Hegseth. Come on. That's really why he wants him around. He doesn't fool me with his bromance, with his man crush. Yes, I think the guy's name was Pennington. Oh, Bennington, Chester Bennington, or I'm not sure if that's who you're talking about. Anyway, so yeah, we'll go ahead and wrap it up because I keep saying I'm going to. We're getting close to 90 minutes, and I love you guys. Thank you so much for joining me. Have a great evening. I'm going to try to do round 2 of dandelion weeding tonight, but I always have to be careful not to overdo it, especially since I had that whole vertigo thing like a year ago, because anything can reactivate it. And I think the first day that I was doing the weeding, I was doing a lot of it bending over, and that I think just about did me in. But now I'm doing it more like on a stool, on like a little like gardening stool that rolls, so I'm not having to bend over as much, so it's not gonna make me dizzy or nauseous. So Pennington in Kansas City, the guy's name was Pennington. Thank you, dear. Thank you. So yeah, and I was gonna say about and I keep saying I'm gonna wrap up, but there's a city north of Cincinnati called Hamilton, Ohio, that was designed, the whole city was invented for the mobsters from Chicago and New York and Miami and probably Kansas City and maybe Vegas too. They would meet in Cincinnati because it was like the central point. And then, they had all these pesky law enforcement officers there. So they were like, screw you guys. We're just going to make our own little city up here and you're not invited. So the town is called Hamilton. It's just north of Cincinnati, like 20 minutes. It is a beautiful small city. Like they had a lot of money to get that city going. And it's like a ghost town. Like there's hardly anybody there because the area has been hit hard by the opium epidemic and such. But when I found out the history about Hamilton, because I was looking at it as a potential place to live, thinking that we wanted to get closer to Cincinnati, and it looked like a really nice place. But it's not. It's not at all. And then finding out the history was just fascinating. So yeah, Hamilton, Ohio. And then mentioning about Reno, Nevada, because I'm pretty sure that it was Sammy Davis Jr. and Frank Sinatra that started Reno. Like they wanted their very own Vegas. Like I know they helped to build up Vegas, but didn't they want their very own Vegas? I don't know. I'll have to do more searching. I get my wires crossed all the time, and I apologize for that when I do. Yesterday, I got my wires crossed with the years of Ghislaine's arrest, which was 2022, and Epstein's arrest, which was 2019. And for a few minutes, I was referring to Epstein being arrested in 2022, and thank God I caught myself, because otherwise it's really annoying. Like I don't want to delete videos, but to make all the corrections is just a headache. So thank goodness I caught myself right in the midst of my crossing wires. But the whole point of that was like looking at the sequence of events and how they match up, like I've been saying, with Hegseth getting married 9 days after Epstein was found deceased. Had they been planning that wedding for a long time? Because the baby had been born 24 months earlier. So was that just like spur of the moment? Like, oh, let's party because this problem is gone. That mission is accomplished. I don't know. I do not know. It's a question, not an allegation. And then with Maxwell in 2022, there were other interesting things going on there. So she was sentenced, I think, on June or July 28th of 2022. And then I can't remember right now. It was June 28th, 2022. And then 2 weeks after that, wait a second. 2 weeks before that was Trumpster Fire's birthday. His birthday is like 14th or 15th of June. But 2 weeks after Ghislaine was sentenced, Ivana fell down a flight of stairs, July 13th, 2022. You can't make this crap up. That to me is extremely suspicious because Ghislaine had dirt on El Presidente, and Lord knows the dirt that Ivana had that she could have buried him with, but instead she's in the dirt at Bedminster. Literally. And no, I'm not going to be scared to say these things. They eat their own. They eat their young, Billy darling. But yeah, I'm so glad that I looked at this. And some of these things, I can't believe that I happened to find the information and then put it together, because I wouldn't necessarily put these things together. I wouldn't necessarily put Ghislaine and Ivana in a chronological order together. I wouldn't necessarily put Hegseth and little E in chronological order together, or Melania and her birthday a year and 2 days ago, which was the day that that giant China shipping container crashed into that bridge in Baltimore, April 26th of 2024. And that was, what was it, 2.5 months after crazy China lady's little sister unalived in the Tesla on her own property in Austin. And just a quick recap, and then I promise I'll wrap it up. But crazy China lady is what Trumpster Fire would call Mitch McConnell's wife, Eileen or Elaine, not Chen, but something similar. And then her sister, Angela Chow, right? Isn't it Chow? Eileen or Irene Chow is Mitch McConnell's wife, who was the first person in the government, first person in Congress to resign because of the insurrection. So go back to 2021. And then Trumpster Fire hated her and hated Mitch McConnell. And then Mitch McConnell like saved his hiney. That must be why Mitch McConnell saved his hiney from being impeached that first time, was to try to prevent horrible things happening to people in his family, you know, like them driving their Teslas into lakes on their own property. So if you can follow, I'll try to slow down. So yeah, he knew the fury that was unleashed in El Presidente by his wife's curt resignation. And so to try to make it up to him probably is why he basically let him off the hook. Thanks, Mitch. And we all hated him for it. And now that he is not planning on running for office again, he's acting like a decent person. It's weird. But then his wife's little sister, Angela Chow, a year ago, I think it was February 11th of 2024, the night that she drove her Tesla into that lake. And she was 50 years old, and she'd only just had her first child like 4 years earlier. So her son was only 4 years old. And she was trying to go see him from the guest house that she was at on the property that her husband's business owned. She was either at the guest house trying to go to the main house, or she was at the main house trying to go to the guest house. Like, she just jumped in her car to drive for like a minute or two, and that was it. But China and the shipping and all this stuff, like, so that was a year and 3 months ago, roughly a year and 2 days ago was Smelania's 54th birthday. And was it a birthday present to have that bridge get smashed by the China container ship? I don't know. Maybe it was just a weird coincidence, but was it just a weird coincidence that the China ship lost power, like right as it's going under the bridge? Those things don't happen. Okay. I agree. All of this is related. I think the people I said were involved doing government dirty deeds: Kylie, Elaine, Chow, Idaho 4, Brian Laundrie, Juan and Jeanette. Oh, Anna Bees, you are on it. So people who don't know, Juan and Jeanette is a couple that passed away the same day that Kylie went missing. So August 6th or 5th, because Kylie was after midnight, making it August 6th to, throw off the timeline some more. I think they went missing before midnight, so August 5th. They were all related to the car show in Reno. So Juan and Jeanette were leaving the car show in Reno when their car allegedly drove off a cliff, just like Ivana's life partner that she never married, the Italian stallion, the one that was a professional boxer and like advertised for Ferrari cars or something like that. He drove himself off of a cliff 2 days before Christmas, 2005. But she had 3 of these Italian stallions, so he was the middle one. He was the only one she didn't marry, but they were together for like 8 years. Adding that to all the other deceased exes. Okay, and the whole Singh family, so many more. Oh my goodness, Anna B's bringing back the Singh family. Okay, we got to wrap it up. They corrupt the innocent. Oh, do tell, at the Reno car show, OMG, fell in a hole, drove off a cliff. There you go, Billy darling. I love you, girl. Lord of the Flies, OMG. It's so nice to see you. That's probably why I'm having trouble ending the chat, my dear, is just because you're here, and it's just such an honor. Not that it's not an honor with Anna B's every time Anna B's is here, and she's so consistent. It's amazing. And there's another one who's being quiet in the background. That might be Fred Field or somebody doing some housework or working or something where they can't jump into the chat, which is fine. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and really sign off this time for reals. I don't get the notifications. Oh, Billy, I'm so sorry. Yes, Billy, that car show had a lot to do with everything. I love Billy, darling. Well, and I think Reno had a lot to do with everything. Can somebody go to Reno? Okay, great. You will. All right. I'm being Sammy for anyone who doesn't remember. Kate and Jägermeister ran straight to Reno. We'll go to Reno. We know where to look for her there. Reno was the drop point. Oh, Billy, darling, you're killing me. Baby's in Reno with some vitamin D. Got a couple of couches, sleep on the love seat. Someone keeps saying I'm insane to complain about a shotgun wedding and a stain on my shirt. Don't believe everything that you read. Got a parking violation and a maggot on my sleeve, so shave your face with some mace in the dark, saving all your food stamps for burning down the trailer park. You know what song I'm reciting. Baby's in Reno with some vitamin D. Okay, I'm doing it. I'm just going to say, love you guys. There you go, Billy. Nailed it. Love him. All right. Have a lovely day. Drink your water, eat your veggies. See you soon. Oh, it's just so hard to hang up on you guys. Come back tomorrow. Love and light. And thanks a million. Now it's not even going to let me. Look at that. And I hope everyone has a great day and night. Love, you guys are the bomb. And take care. Yes. Be well. See you soon.